Visual novels. This is a genre of games that I really enjoy, though many people out there don't. A lot of gamers are on the fence on whether or not interactive novels should be considered video games, but for those that do like them, they are a nice little gateway to get into a good story with visuals attached and a sort of choose your own adventure feeling. The VN we are covering today is one that got very popular over in the PC world when it released back in 2017. Now we have a console version to play on the go with some extra content to boot. Here is my review of Doki Doki Literature Club Plus for the Nintendo Switch. The story of Doki Doki, or DDLC, is about a nameless protagonist that goes to school with childhood friend Sayori. After being convinced by said friend, he joins the Literature Club, writing poetry and spending time with its members. The game starts off like a typical dating sim where you can get close to one of the girls, but quickly makes a much darker turn as it delves into more adult themes like depression and anxiety. This is part of what makes it so unique, as it goes from being a cute dating sim with funny and comical dialogue to a much darker and creepy VN, which a lot of VNs haven't really done as far as the shift goes. Sadly, I've got a lot of thoughts about the story, the twists and turns, and I can't really talk about them to avoid spoilers. Doki Doki Literature Club is really a game you need to go into as blind as possible, as all of these shocks, twists, and turns have a much bigger impact when you don't know what's going on. When it comes to gameplay, Doki Doki Plus is a visual novel with interactive elements through dialogue choices and writing poetry. Over the course of the adventure, you will be navigating story scenes and making various interactive choices in an attempt to move the story in a certain direction. Before getting started, DDLC Plus is an enhanced version of the original. We've got slightly updated visuals for characters and backgrounds, though, to be honest, players of the original might not be able to tell that much of a difference. It's a pretty slight upgrade. The biggest inclusion is a set of side stories that give some background info and lore on the game's heroines. These are much different in tone when compared to the main visual novel, but lets you dive into the lives of the four girls before the main game takes place. Getting to that main game, this console edition caused a lot of skepticism on the internet. On PC platforms, DDLC has a way to mess with its players by actively modifying its own files when certain story points are reached. Many people thought this would be nearly impossible to emulate on a console, but they found a way around it. The game runs the VN, but also a bit of a desktop or file explorer user interface with all of the files it can and will mess with as you play. This gives both you and the game the ability you need to get through the different endings and routes. Once you dive into the game, it progresses like your typical visual novel. You navigate scenes with options to skip and autoplay, along with saving and loading in different places. It's pretty standard and looks remarkably similar to the UI from the PC version. You also get interactive elements in the form of not only dialogue choices, but poetry. The latter makes this feel a little different. You write 3 poems for the Literature Club over the course of the story, and this lets you choose 20 words to include in said poem. The idea is that each word will give you points towards one of the heroines. The more points, the more likely you are to go on their route, so it's a matter of thinking about what words would go best with each girl's personality. It can be a bit of a mind bender, but the game gives you all the tools you need. If you take a quick look through that fake UI we talked about a moment ago, one of the game's files lets you see all of the best words for each girl, so you don't even need to browse the internet to get a guide. But as I said before, this game changes things and will change them quickly. Once you get through the game's first act and the first reveal happens, it begins screwing with you. I won't say much, but the game will fool you in a lot of ways that you may not expect with your runs through the game, save files, and even the Switch's built-in software functionality. In the later acts, I found myself repeatedly being confused, and one part of Act 3 actually spooked and scared me in my seat. As all of this comes together, we get a decent amount of content and length. It took me around 8 hours to get through all 4 chapters and get the first ending. I was up to about 12 to 15 hours by the time I'd gotten the quote-unquote true ending and went through the side stories that unlocked. That's plenty of time for the $15 price tag and arguably acceptable for the $30 price tag of its upcoming physical release. Though it is worth noting that if you're not into the side stories and have a handheld PC, the 2017 original is still available on Steam for free. When it comes to controls, we have some nice options here. You can do everything with button controls, but handheld mode also gives you very responsive touch options. From tapping on words for poems to scrolling through the writing you have to read from the girls, the controls work very well. Next up is presentation. Visually, the game looks pretty good. Some of the backgrounds and CGs do have small little jaggies way off in the distance, but if you're in handheld mode, you won't even notice them. Performance I have no issues with, no frame drops and no freezing, it worked fine from start to finish. Now let's move on to battery life, and I'm going to use my new format in preparation of more Switch units coming out later this year with the OLED model. Doki Doki Plus has a range of about 5 to 8.5 hours on the original and Switch Lite models, and on the Redboxer V2 it has a range of 9.5 to almost 12 hours. In conclusion, the famed Doki Doki VN has come to the console and handheld worlds. While some may not wish to pay for an enhanced version of a VN that's already available for free on PC in its original form, this is a really good story that will entertain and terrify you by the time it is over. Reviews to Go rates Doki Doki Literature Club Plus for the Nintendo Switch a 9 out of 10. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them below. Thank you for watching, and have a great day.